Good afternoon and welcome back to the proceedings of Dhaka Media Summit 2022, Day 2. At this point, we are going to have a panel discussion, a roundtable discussion on media sustainability and safety concerns for journalists in Nepal and beyond. The session will be moderated by Ms. Priyanka Jha, Vice-Chairperson, Media Action Nepal. We have as discussions Dr. Laxman, Datt, Pant, Dr. Kundan, Aryal, and Dr. Samiksha, Koirala. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the session moderator, Ms. Priyanka Jha, to the audience. Ms. Priyanka Jha is the Vice Chairperson of Media Action Nepal. Experienced in media monitoring, conflict and gender sensitivity, research writing, and facilitation skills, Ms. Priyanka Jha holds a master's degree in conflict and peace studies and an undergrad degree in media studies. She served as a journalist for a number of national media outlets in Nepal. Also, she worked in a number of research projects on media and freedom of expression. Interested in and worked with projects related to freedom of speech, media and gender, Ms. Priyanka Jha specializes in the areas of social inclusion and gender equality. Prior to joining Media Action Nepal as the Vice Chairperson, she has worked and supported a number of national and international campaigns and institutions, including Collective Campaign for Peace and the UNESCO as media monitoring expert and researcher. Ms. Priyanka Jha, a very good afternoon to you and the panel, Dr. Pant, Dr. Aryal, and Dr. Samiksha. Good afternoon to you. Ms. Priyanka, I would like to request you to take over from here and start the session, start the discussion by introducing the panel to the audience. I believe this will be, again, another engaging discussion session because this is something of mass interest, I believe, because when it comes to the safety of journalists, I think the whole world is concerned about this. So over to you, Ms. Jha.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah.
And thank you, Mohammed Animul Islam. It was a very interesting session. Welcome to our next session, a roundtable discussion on media sustainability and safety concerns for journalists in Nepal and beyond. A very good afternoon, everyone. I'm Priyanka Jha, and I've just been introduced by Barbara. Thank you so much for such a detailed introduction. I'm the Vice Chairperson of Media Action Nepal, and I've been involved in media researches for more than a decade now. My educational background is in media studies and conflict studies. With this, I'd also like to take an opportunity to share about the work of Media Action Nepal. So since its inception 5 years ago, it has been working in areas like freedom of expression, media development, capacity building of journalists, policy dialogues, gender sensitivity, and media research, among others. So we also recently completed a workshop on code of conduct and conflict sensitive reporting with participants from Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and India. Our chair of Media Action Nepal, Laxman Pant, has also recently been elected as co-lead of Media Freedom Coalition-Consultative Network, a key global network to defend and promote press freedom across the world. Media Action Nepal is very happy to be the associate partner of Dhaka Media Summit, the Future of Journalism. And I'm really excited to be moderating a panel on media sustainability and safety concerns for journalists in Nepal and beyond. We have an hour and a half together, but my goal is to give you the best possible discussion on the topic safety of journalists, gender sensitivity, and media sustainability. I also expect a lot of questions from our fellow Zoom participants, and we'll make time for it throughout the hour. So if you have any question, you can put it in the chat box and I'll take in the questions right there. Now let me introduce you to the panelists for this session. Our panelists are Mr. Kundan Aryal. So besides numerous journalistic products, including newspaper column and articles, Aryal has several media-related publications, research work, and journal articles to his credit. Currently Associate Professor at the Central Department of Journalism and Mass Communication of Tribhuwan University in Nepal. Aryal also has a PhD in journalism from Tribhuwan University with the topic Transition of Newspaper Journalism from Partisanship to Commercialism in Post-1990 in Nepal. So our next panelist is Mr. Laxman Pant. Mr. Laxman Pant is an internationally acclaimed media researcher, trainer, educator, media rights advocate, and communication strategist. Laxman Pant is also the chairperson of Media Action Nepal, and as I mentioned, that he is now the co-chair of Media Freedom Coalition-Consultative Network. Pant also teaches media ethics to the master's degree students at Tbilisi State University, Georgia. A PhD scholar in media ethics and professionalism at Infrastructure University, Malaysia, Pant holds extensive knowledge for the local, regional, international media environment. And an author for more than a dozen books, Pant has also contributed a number of research articles and a book chapter to international journals on different disciplines of media. Our panelist also includes Ms. Samiksha Koirala. So Koirala holds a PhD in journalism and gender from Department of Media and Communication, University of Oslo, Norway. As a gender and media specialist with a strong research expertise, she works with educational institutions, governments, UN agencies, and NGOs. With more than 8 years of experience in academic and non-academic research and around 10 years of experience in journalism, she has undertaken and led various studies and training programs for journalists and media researchers. Koirala has also authored more than a dozen publications, including peer-reviewed journals. A very warm welcome to all our three panelists. So without further delay, now I would like to begin. And my first round of questions would be general questions where we will be expecting our panelists to explain the situation, scenarios, the issues of the question in detail, so that it's easier for all of us present here to understand the basics before entering the specific questions. So my first question, I would like to pose my first question for Mr. Kundan Aryal. Mr. Aryal, given your expertise on the subject matter, would you please let us know about media development in Nepal from a historical perspective? So Nepal has been through various forms of government, from panchayat system to federalism. So how has media developed or progressed in line with those systems and with time? Over to you, Mr. Aryal.
Thank you, Ms. Priyanka Jha, and thank you very much to Dhaka Media Summit and Media Action Nepal. So thank you for this opportunity to say something about Nepali media, and especially I will be concentrated on media sustainability. And before going to the topic that sustainability, as you mentioned, I should say something about the historical background. Nepal's first newspaper dates back to dawn of 20th century. That means in 1901, we started a newspaper, but that was government controlled newspaper, and over the years up to 1951, there were no independent newspapers in the country, and in 1951 we got our first democracy, and that was the day of modernity in Nepal, actually. And here in Nepal, the radio broadcasting was started in that year, and newspapers from private sector, independent newspapers were started, though they were weeklies, small weeklies, but they were independent newspapers. But just after 10 years, we lost our democracy and dissolution of parliamentary system and elected government. And for over 30 years, 3 decades, our constitutions and laws, they were very restricted. And those, as per the restricted laws and main laws, constitution, media landscape suffered a lot. And the television, during that period, in late 80s, 84, television was started, but that was controlled by the government. So the media landscape before 1990, in Nepal was comprised of 2 broadsheets, one Nepali and one English dailies. Both were owned by government. One radio, nationwide radio, controlled by government, and then television totally controlled by government. So that was the media scenario before 1990. That is why the 1990 witnessed rapid transition of media landscape. It was benchmark in terms of media freedom, in terms of freedom of expression. and then only we started, the newspaper media industry started to proliferate in Nepal. And during that time, radio was also allowed in private sector in 1997 after 90, and television was started from the private sector only in around 2000. So with this background, I should say that yes, now there is true transition in terms of media transformation of the media. First one was political transition of 1990 that provided the ground for the proliferation of independent media. And after about 10 years, the second transition was from the perspective of this technology, internet-based media. And after 2014, Nepal's audience, the general audience of the media, they started to shift from the traditional media to the online-based, web-based journalism. And obviously, as we can say, everywhere in the world, after outbreak of worldwide pandemic COVID-19, Nepal, it was last blow for the traditional media, and we have cases that even nation's largest newspaper media house, it shut down its one of its weekly publication. And not only that, for a couple of days they were forced to they were only online version. Even Kantipur and Kathmandu post the big dailies. So after that, there is one data from Press Council that we have now. We have tentatively about 800 newspapers, in the country, including dailies, weeklies, and weeklies sometimes. But out of those number, only 19% newspapers were published during the year 21 and 20 and 21. And we have about 800 private radios, independent radios, and about 1,000 televisions. But all of those media are in a existential crisis. They are struggling to survive. So in this backdrop, for us, sustainability is still a very relevant topic. And that is why we should thank Dhaka Media Summit that this very relevant subject, and I will be trying to present Nepal's case, and I think it will be useful to other countries too, because Nepal, every country has a history, story, and we have also, and we have long march towards this stage where we are now, from a century long newspapers, more than a century we have newspapers, but basically from 7 decades of history of media during early days before 1990. That was age of struggling for the press freedom and opinion. And now after 90, for the last 30 years, it is 3 decades on, we have free media, we have democracy, we have very progressive constitution, even though we have problems. And I think I should continue after this, up to now. At this moment, I should stop, otherwise it will be monotonous. I think I will come back. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Aryal. I'll get back to you next with the question on media sustainability. But moving forward, now my next question is for Mr. Laxman Pant. Mr. Pant, we'll be touching the safety issues, so in brief. So, Mr. Pant, could you just inform us about the safety challenges that journalists in Nepal face, and you being the expert on the subject matter at a global level? So, could you also highlight the safety challenges faced by journalists in South Asia, and could you also answer this question in relation to the COVID-19 scenario?
Well, thank you very much, Priyanka, and I would like to thank Professor Jude University of Liberal Arts in Bangladesh and the IAMCR Bangladesh for inviting us to this important discussion through Dhaka Media Summit. And this builds upon our previous relationship with Professor Jude and the university he has been working with and the Media Action Nepal. And yes, the floor has been set along with a brief note on how media in Nepal has gone through different stages and faced with the problems surrounding, though he has not touched on the COVID-19 context yet. There are different safety issues that we need to understand. I would like to highlight with the South Asian perspective on why safety of journalists matters. While safety of journalists is a very broader terminology, the issue of journalist safety is also critical to the journalists being active agents in the social and public life for the promotion of freedom of expression. There are continuous aggressions, I would say, against media professionals, and the failure to bring the culprits to justice, not only here in Nepal, but many countries across South Asia. There are some similarities on the countries of Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal. They are signatory to several international human rights treaties, including that of the ICCPR, that sets background for these all countries to promote, protect, and prosecute issues surrounding impunity, issues surrounding safety of journalists, issues surrounding freedom of expressions. And when we talk about the recent developments after the COVID-19 context, many journalists have impacted badly alongside the COVID-19 sustainability issues. And one key thing that we need to take here in mind in the South Asian context, giving examples from Nepal, for example, 500 journalists in Nepal, our observations from Media Action Nepal and some other agencies working here in Nepal show that they have lost their jobs. And mostly the journalists leaving jobs from their workplace represent the commercial media outlets, the largest selling media outlets, and in the pretext of COVID-19 business loss. So this has created a big problem for journalists working here in Nepal in terms of their professional safety. And now journalists started searching for alternative jobs or works. That is one situation, but of course we understand that journalists across South Asia or across the world might have been affected with these issues. But the saddest aspect for Nepal is that there are no emergency relief packages by the so-called big media industries and corporate media houses. That is, we consider a very serious obstacles to independent media. That is one thing. Coming to the physical safety of journalists, as many of you know, Nepal went through a political conflict for 10 years, which ended actually 16 years back with a new political system being adopted, the 5 years of the elected government coming to end with the newer announcement to the newer elections. And there were many laws drafted by the Federal Parliament of Nepal, also the provincial assemblies across Nepal in 7 provinces. And the legal issues, legal protection, introduction of the mechanisms that Nepal was part of the very ambitious United Nations plan on safety of journalists and the issue of impunity. So the international agencies and media rights advocacy groups in and outside Nepal reminded authorities of Nepal to address the issue of impunity. But it's not only the case of Nepal. We can see several issues in Bangladesh, in India, the recent introduction to a law that compels journalists to disclose their sources in India. Also, the issues of impunity are very closely linked to the security issues in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. So Nepal and other countries that I mentioned are parties to the international instrument, including ICCPR, and they have also shown their commitments to the newly adopted United Nations resolutions on safety of journalists and the issue of impunity. I think this is high time for authorities in one part and the media industries of the large nature to take specific measures to protect their journalists in both terms, that of the physical safety issues and professional safety issues. There are three important issues: the protection issue, prevention issue, and prosecution issues. The countries in South Asia have shown their interest and shown their commitment towards implementation of very ambitious international tools, international instruments. But when it comes to the prosecution mechanism, the issues of impunities have not been addressed. And the pretext of the COVID-19 that has somehow other way affected the way impunity could be addressed. So I think giving examples from Nepal, as such, we have very progressive laws, I would say, in line with the international commitments of Nepal. But in the recent years, the laws that have been introduced in the pretext of controlling, say, online media content, especially that of the social media content, would say YouTube and Facebook, that is not so far closely linked with the practice of journalism. That is one thing. The revision amendment to the existing penal code, another thing. Amendment to several laws, including that of the Electronic Transaction Act. These laws are connected to the issues of freedom of expressions, but that have a very close link to the exercise of independent journalism, investigative reporting. So as Nepal is going through a transition towards drafting new laws, given that we have new political system here in Nepal, the new republic system, it is high time for Nepal and the neighboring countries to take care in mind their own constitutional fundamental rights provisions and their commitments to the international tools and mechanisms and United Nations calls on how they could better protect the journalists of their country. And why should they protect journalists, especially through the prosecution mechanisms, because it is having very deep, I would say, impact to the lives of journalists. When the cases of impunity are not addressed, there is a kind of self-censorship is created among journalists, and they would also opt for some sort of political inclination. Maybe we carry forward these issues to the next step. I would stop here for now, Priyanka, and wait for your further questions or the questions from participants. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Panta, for informing us about the safety challenges of the journalists in Nepal, but also in South Asia. I'll come back to you with the next question soon. Now, my next question would be for Ms. Samiksha Koirala. Ms. Koirala, given your expertise in researches related to gender sensitivity in media, my question for you is to please let us know about the situation of gender sensitivity in Nepal, from content to the presence of women in media perspective, and also where do we think we stand when it comes to gender sensitivity in media in the South Asian region?
Thank you so much. Thanks to the organizer and Media Action Nepal for this opportunity. As you said, when we start talking about gender sensitivity, it's definitely important we talk about both the aspects, the participation aspect and the representation of how men, women, and people of other gender and sexuality are represented in the news contents, in media contents in general. Although a lot of efforts have been there lately, I'm sorry to say the picture is not rosy. It's not rosy when it comes to media representations. It's not satisfying. It's rather worrisome when we talk about the work environment in media organizations in a Nepali context. But then again, to sort of like compare and say, I'll definitely come back to that later. But then again, to say where we stand in South Asia compared to like our our neighbors, it's exactly difficult to say because being a researcher myself, I just don't believe in making these assumptions and claims. And we seriously lack comparative study just to say, you know, this one is doing better or this one is better than this country. Personally, for me, I remember doing a study because I did my master's in University of Dhaka. So people from Bangladesh are very close to me. I remember studying, comparing the participation of women journalists of Bangladesh and Nepal. And that was more than almost 12 years ago, because I did it in 2010. So at that time, what I found was Bangladeshi women journalists were doing a lot better, and the participation looked really promising. The work environment was very gender sensitive than what we had back then. But now I'm doing follow-up on other studies from my Bangladeshi colleague, and I see that things are changing, and it's not changing for good, and a lot of threats to safety and a lot of insensitive contents are again making space when we talk about Bangladeshi media as well. But again, against the global backdrop of what global media monitoring project that sort of does the media monitoring of various countries, it also shows that the South Asian countries are below average when it comes to how often we cite, interview, or how often we write about women issues, how sensitive we are when it comes to representation. That also sort of gives us a small glimpse on there's so much to do in order to increase the sensitivity and in order to ensure a gender sensitive workplace for the media organization. And just to give some idea about the Nepali context for our international audience, what I would like to add is even though more and more women journalists are making their careers, they are largely underrepresented when it comes to decision-making level. And same goes not just for media organizations. There are almost very few women when it comes to decision-making roles in journalists' unions and other decision, other government agencies that works with media. So most of the time, the primary concerns of women journalists in the studies that we have conducted shows that they're very much concerned on the area of recruitment, the work assignment and promotion. There's growing job insecurity, and they have been asking for greater gender sensitivity in the workplace, and the issue of sexual harassment and safety is very much there. So talking about the number, according to the data of Federation of Nepali Journalists, the number of women journalists is around 18%. So between 2004 and 14, there was a rapid increase. It increased almost by 100%, but after that, we haven't seen the significant growth. So that is also where we have to start asking question why it's happening. And talking about the media representation, even I did my PhD and I studied about gender media representation in the Nepali newspapers. And it showed that only in average, around 10% of women are quoted and they are subject of news stories. That is definitely alarming, I would say. We will definitely talk about it more, but just to end, what I want to focus more is, it's not like our media leaders or media houses are not aware about gender. The awareness is slowly increasing, but even today we sort of think gender as one of the many issues. Okay, let's hire one women reporter, job done. Let's cite somebody, or let's interview at least one woman, and the job is done. We are gender sensitive enough. But what we are failing to make them understand, or what they are refusing to understand, is gender is a cross-cutting issue. It has to start from recruitment to promotion. It should be there from job assignment to planning to operation. The gender mainstreaming is important. Just recruitment is important, but just like you are hiring one woman and saying you are gender sensitive, that's not enough. I'll address more on when we talk about why it's happening on the media sustainability part, but I would like to stop for now. Thank you, Priyanka.
Thank you, Ms. Samiksha. I completely agree with your point. Like women in media should not be in media just because from a token approach. having a women does not mean a media is gender sensitive. I completely agree with you. With this, I'd like to get back to Mr. Aryal, and as we're talking about media sustainability, and we're also saying that the media are now getting digitalized, and now we have new medias, and we also have social medias. So with this, I'd like to ask you, Mr. Aryal, that could you shed some light on the situation and the issues of media sustainability in Nepal in relation to digitalization and media convergence?
Thank you. I was talking about different phases of Nepali media, evolution of Nepali mass media. I prefer to call media industry, which is existing now in Nepal, because it has been creating job. It has been correlating the different strata of society, different groups of society, and we have been expecting some functions from the media, Nepali media. Over the years, with different phases, we witness three changes in three major areas, that is medium attributes or network attributes, or the social practices and values. The changes are occurring in all these three spheres. And obviously the new media after 2014, new media is people are being shifted from the traditional media to new media, and by 2019 or 2020, the number of online news portals has grown up to, escalated up to 3,000. We have 3,000 online news portals, more than 3,000. But the problem is we have some sort of confusion among the different types of new media. Actually, the new media means the media which are providing editorial content, who are following the journalistic norms and values and professionalism. They are doing journalism. That is one part. But there are other online news portals which are the outcome of misuse of media by the political or other vested interest. They are just fly-by-night media. They used to write anything. They don't abide by the professional norms and values, and this is very evident when we see the complaints at the Press Council Nepal. These days, most of the press councils complain. I think about more than 80% complaints are being filed against these kind of online media, and Press Council has started to register the online media, but those who are problematic online media, they are not registered. So that is one area. And another is social media. And in the area of social media, in contrary to earlier expectation, general expectation that new media, the social media would enhance the interactivity, especially the many to many. It will be the media for the many to many, or it will be the media to address political leaders and to make political leaders accountable to the general public. But that is not happening. Here I want to cite one article. Recently I went through that is digital democracy is very much fat democracy. It has becoming fat democracy. Internet media is not doing as per our expectation, and it has been created one kind of ghetto. Certain people with the same like, dislike, and they are making their sell. So that is one problem. And obviously, before explaining more about this digital media, I would like to present the 8 dimensions that I have noted down after when Mr. Pant informed me to that we have to speak for the Dhaka Media Summit. Then I have just noted down 8 dimensions why Nepali media are still in the state of problem with the sustainability, or the why Nepali media landscape has been challenged by the issue of sustainability. Our retention of our journalists as a whole in media landscape is very low. People would like to continue their job as journalists for a long time. That is one area. And our newspapers were short-lived newspapers during those authoritarian era. But even today, very few newspapers, very few media are in a well situation. Otherwise, most of the media, they have problems. So what are the problems and what are the challenges for the sustainability? I have noted down, despite technological advancement and despite the inadequacy of understanding technology. For example, audience are being shifted from media to traditional media to new media, but our media houses, they were lagging behind. That is, we should thank COVID-19 in this regard, actually, although that is not suitable. But even that COVID-19, they forced traditional media to come up with the use of this technology, new technology. And apart from this technological dimension, there are others. One is socialization of media people. The very pertinent issue is socialization of media people. And I mean socialization of media people means which includes lack of adequate media support system in terms of education, training, and empirical research on the usage and gratification of audience, a role of media as a mirror, as a movers. They are many journalists, the newcomers especially, who are involved in online media. They are very much in confusion state. Rather, they are media are mirror of society or the movers of society. And visible editorial policies, ethical guidelines by individual media outlets. We have been raising this issue, just like we have been raising this issue for the big media. At least your policies, your editorial policies, your ethical standards should be visible. Anyone can say that this is your policy, and particular news or particular writing or the media product is not in line with your policy. That should be there, but it is lacking. And the representativeness of news content is undoubtedly affected by journalist conceptions of which events and people are most newsworthy. So we need to tell them about the understanding of newsworthiness in this era, and it encompasses all gender issues and many more issues, because they are unable to treat with the issues, different issues. Second one is lack of a strong financial backbone, and that is related with the entire economic condition of the country, and it resulted in lack of pay and career advancement prospects. And I have done one research for University Grants Commission long back ago. It was in 1915, but that shows that one of the sources of job dissatisfaction is not other than the financial matters in Nepali journalism. So we have minimum wages committee, so-called minimum wages committee, and that is most of the time that is non-functional, because that is totally constructed in a like a political equation of the country. And third one is inadequate investment in content development. That we have very pertinent issue in Nepal. Most of the media, they are not investing money for the content, but they are investing in other field, and there is cross ownership as well. And because they are not willing to invest in content, I term here like it is similar to capital flight situation, like outflow of audience from domestic media to the regional or the global media, or even media from the other countries. For example, Nepali people, the Nepali film industry, Nepali films are very less popular than the Hindi Bollywood movies. And even in the case of television, I think most of the Nepali televisions TRP are less than Indian television TRPs. So and we cannot stop younger generation to watch other materials that are satisfying for them, that are gratifying for them. And another issue is issue of inclusiveness. We have Dalit population, we have discrimination, caste-based discrimination, even untouchability. We have Janajati, Aborigines people, indigenous people, and we have problem with the women and lack of idea how to cover children and women issues, lack of sensitivity. All these includes this issue of inclusiveness. And other one is politicization. Politicization means it has been the trend of over politicization has been leading the Nepali media towards partisan tendency. And even after 1990, our media, most of our media is, in a way, they are divided in different political lining, and consequence is editorial compromise of editorial editorial independence. So they are willingly compromising their editorial independence because of their affiliations to for certain party and unprofessional relationship with the government and the other stakeholders. Even with the government, many a time big media, they are demonstrating their unholy kind of unprofessional kind of relationship, and obviously that has been creating anomalies in the process of gatekeeping. You cannot you cannot find the logic behind certain materials time and again in the media. And sixth one is inadequate exercise on policy formation and lack of transparency. Recently, we have one amendment, as Mr. Pant mentioned earlier, that we have one amendment of this Broadcasting Act and the directives based on that Broadcasting Act, and that is also that is also weak to define what is online TV channels, and that has been creating big hue and cry. So time and again, for example, I would like to put here. I was just also one of the members of task force to convert Nepal television, State One television and Radio Nepal to public service broadcasting. And it has been over the years, we have been talking about that, but still now the bureaucrats, the administrative leaders and the political leaders, they are not willing to make those big institutions, broadcasting institutions, free from political interference. So that is another way. And recently there is one problem. Our constitution is very progressive, but what our provincial governments and even the central governments are doing, they are making laws against the constitution. I have an opportunity to see the draft of this, to review the Gandaki province. For example, we have 7 provinces, one of them is Gandaki. So Gandaki province law, media law, that was totally against constitution. And I have heard that most of the laws that we have been formulating, they are not taking care of letter and spirit of our current constitution. So that is, and we are very much unable to make law, policies, directives in the basis of evidence-based empirical research. So that is one area that where government can do something. And another one, but very much pertinent, is hyper-commercialization. Hyper-commercialization means, as Raymond Williams says, that hyper-commercialization in a way, we can say that everyone is free to sell his her idea as a media product, and everyone is free to buy any media product. But that is only in saying. But in practice, the financier, the media owners, they only produce which are very much profitable, which are very much sellable. So media commercialization has been marginalizing the various socio-political issues that are not profitable. And over politicization and partition, over politicization or partition, along with the hyper commercialization, sometimes demonstrate the system of media capture. And we are heading towards that. Our neighboring country, India, that is these days, it is very common to say that, and even from Indian scholars and media activists from India, they are saying that their media has been already captured by the ruling elite. So we are also heading towards that. So these are the areas where if we can improve, if we can change something, then only we can make our media as per the public general expectation. There are normative expectations from the media, and we can fulfill that expectation only when we can improve all these areas. So comprehensive, workable, and evidence-based media policy is must, I think, at this juncture. And without that, we cannot play any of the role as perceived by the general public, or as the social responsibility like surveillance, interpretation, linkage, transmission of values, entertainment. All these kind of role we cannot play without assuring these 8 issues. Thank you for this moment.
Thank you, Mr. Aryal, for such an interesting insights and providing us such detail about the challenges of media sustainability with us having new media and digitization and social media. So I have a very similar question to Mr. Pant with related with this, and with the advent of new media, there's also a chance of having fake news, disinformation, misinformation, which further leads to the threat to the journalist. So what is your take on it? How is the situation of this being related to a new media being related, bringing additional threat to the journalist in Nepal and also in South Asia? So, and what can be done to minimize it or overcome it? Over to you, Mr. Pant.
Well, thank you, Priyanka. I would say new media is not a threat to professional journalism, because new media is a platform where citizens wish to express their dissatisfactions towards their exclusion from the mainstreaming of what they claim for rights. So there is a tendency to blame new media in the pretext that there are some bad orientation towards what to be disseminated from the newsrooms. So this is not only common here in Nepal, but many countries across South Asia. I had an opportunity to work in Southeast Asia as well, looking after 11 countries. We released a report a few months back. So what I see is government in Southeast Asian countries and some attempts here in Nepal as well, discussions going on to control social media outlets and internet freedom in the pretext of they are disseminating disinformation. So I would suggest and recommend all South Asian countries to look after, to introspect our newsrooms, whether we are giving entry to a person who is well oriented towards media ethics, the principles of preventing disinformation and all. If we look into that way, I think journalists or newsrooms don't need to worry about what they disseminate and how social media are reaching out to the public for their freedom of expression. That is one thing. But I would like to continue with what I started at the beginning for a broader safety mechanisms that is the need of hour. There are professional safety issues, as I mentioned, and physical safety issues. Legal reform is one important concern for Nepal at this moment, because many our commitments and our fundamental rights provisions have not been appropriately reflected, and in many instances, lawmakers have taken very less account of its own fundamental rights provisions and inviting criticism over what they draft. So one maybe way forward from this discussion is to have broader discussion among the stakeholders, including media rights activists, journalists, and media outlets, and the lawmakers, that they are in the process that could possibly reflect it and replicate it in the exercise of other countries in the region as well. But having said that, I would also like to link the safety issue to three major components, that of the media freedom and media sustainability issue. The terminology, it might have been discussed in the other context as well, but we brought this terminology after COVID-19 and talking about sustainability, and many media owners, I would say, who claim to have been contributed to their country's economic prosperity, now stating that because Nepal's largest media house now going through a public, limited kind of company, inviting share from the publics, that served in Nepal for more than maybe 2.5 decades or 3 decades around, never talked about public share of their companies. But this has resulted from the COVID-19, but that cannot be given an excuse to the media owners. The Working Journalists Act of Nepal as such states about investing at least 1% of their budgets to the capacity building and research and exchanges, opportunity programs for journalists, but none of media outlets so far, in my knowledge, have done that. So I think this is high time for media owners and the authorities to think about a sustainable way, maybe protecting public interest media, the community-based media, journalist-owned media, coming up with some packages without affecting their content. Because there is, in South Asian context, almost in all countries, there is high rate of conflict of interest when it comes to the production of content. So this should be taken in mind when we plan for a sustainability alternatives from the governments, from authorities, or from the media houses themselves when it comes to the sustainable media, so that it could watch upon the wrongdoings of the state authorities. Also to protect and advocate a free media in the region in particular. Maybe learnings come from Nepal or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka and India and other countries as well. Our experience working with some countries in this region, so that there are many similar things that we can tackle that we have seen throughout these issues. And when it comes to the issues of safety of journalists, the authorities need to repeal laws that contradict with their commitments to their own constitutional provisions, and that allow threats to media or create some sort of violence against journalists. So any sort of violence, it may sometimes come in the pretext of disaster, future disaster maybe. We now COVID cases are being normalized, and almost all businesses are back to their work. So we should prepare ourselves, the authorities, and the media houses in particular, that of the large investment kind of media outlets, should prepare themselves for a future disaster that could possibly impact the way journalists look into the wrongdoings of these power centers. Also, an enactment of the laws, policies to secure the safety of journalists at workplace, outside workplace, and this could possibly go around the addressing the diversity and inclusion. When it comes to the issue of diversity, as Dr. Samiksha touched on how Nepal's media in particular are not that much sensitive towards creating content or ensuring participation of women in the newsrooms. That is one way, but at the same time, we could also alternatively think about inclusion of diverse content, including that of, say, disability issues, or marginalized people, and that all, for which we need to put in place the laws, guidelines. We don't need to wait for media houses. They don't need to wait for a media law or regulations to ensure that their staff, their journalists or editors are protected from any kind of external interest. So, but the saddest aspect, I have been engaged into several regional and international missions that have been awareing state authorities in this region. What we have seen that media outlets in particular, that of the owners, they don't want to discuss the issues of safety, professional safety of journalists. Also, the issue of gender inclusion in the newsrooms. Maybe we need more trainings, more awareness, more digital literacy campaign to prevent disinformation. Almost all people here in Nepal talk about social media creating, chaos among people by disseminating bossed stories, unverified stories. I would suggest that newsrooms should better concern about the process of verification in the newsrooms. And if we create credible information in the newsrooms, there are less chances for public to share, unverified news stories that could possibly result into, increasing the credibility of media outlet. That is another thing. Also, there was some attempt back in 2013 or 14 in Nepal, that Nepal was rolled out among 4 countries by the United Nations to look into the implementation of safety of journalists and the UN plan of action on the issue of impunity. But we have seen at the international level that the UNESCO Director General's report back in 2016 and 17 until 18, that Nepal has never been reported with its progress towards ending impunity. Same is the case with countries in South Asia. They are not responsive towards their commitments to the international community. And it's a kind of, they have commitments to tools, but they are not fulfilling it. Maybe we need more substantive documents on part of the academics or by universities or researchers and organizations like us, come up with some substantive documents that could give some sort of pressure to the authorities that they actually work on these things. These are some of the issues that we could possibly prevent disinformation, also increase the credibility of media content, also protect the interest of what some would like to say citizen journalism kind of thing. Personally, I'm not in favor of how citizen journalism could prosper. We could link them to the sources of news, of course. But yes, if their citizens are active, if they are aware about what to be consumed and what not to be consumed, and why the safety of journalists matter, because safety of by talking safety of journalists, we're not talking about the safety of journalists. Actually, we are talking about the safety of our own well-being, the safety of democracy, democratic institutions, the issue of inclusion, the issue of pluralism, issue of diversity. If journalists are safe enough to report independently, freely, they could possibly protect the democracy as well. But yes, this is the fact that not only in Nepal, almost all countries in South Asia, I would say, we have some problems communicating with our networks in countries like sometimes in Afghanistan, Pakistan, maybe sometimes in Bhutan. But there are frequent discussion among organizations that we should come up with some sort of regional mechanism, despite the fact that there are different political systems that could possibly link these all efforts of the academia, of the media rights organizations, of researchers, and of the media outlets to protect the best interest of journalism, free media, and the issue of now coming to this sustainability issue. Why should media outlets be sustained? It is because if there are more media outlets, sometimes people go on talking about the number of online is too much. We have, yes, as Dr. Aryal stated, 3,000 plus online news portals registered with the Department of Information and Broadcasting, and they're unregistered as well. So there are some laws coming in favor of advocating free press in the pretext that Nepal is a state party to several international treaties. But at the same time, when the authority does not need to be authoritarian to control media. When media is free and they are not politically inclined, there are high chances for media to be attacked. But the saddest aspect of the Nepali journalism practice, as Dr. Aryal stated, that Nepali journalists are divided into several and political lines. They are inclined to the political ideologies, and they would take pride being an activist with political parties, and they are, through that they are inviting some sort of threats against them. And the issues of gender inclusion has also been derailed because of this inclination. I think this is high time to talk or internalize all initiative taking place among the academia, research, and media rights development organizations to come up with some sort of regional mechanism that would talk and also advise in serious time during the time of disaster or during the time of conflict to the authorities that they have responsibility to protect journalists for the protection of their democratic systems. I would stop here, Priyanka. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pant. Thank you for your insights. And also talking about how new media is associated with fake information, disinformation, and misinformation, but yet that is due to the lack of professionalism. And moving forward, I would also like to see media sustainability from the perspective of gender. So my next question would be for Ms. Samiksha Koirala, and my question would be, what is the perspective on why is gender important when discussing about media sustainability?
Thank you so much. Well, I think the gender dimension of sustainability has been sort of largely neglected when we talk about media studies, even in our practice, even in our research. I don't see that we talk about sustainability from the eyes of feminists or while addressing the gender dimension. Even at the times we discuss media sustainability, we somehow tend to forget the important element that is gender. Personally, I think there are different stakeholders that we have to hold accountable when we bring gender dimension and when we relate it to media sustainability. One of them being advertisers, and one of the arguments, even Dr. Aryal was talking about this hyper commercialization and the challenges that it brings to the content and overall media scenario. And one of the arguments that I often see is that it's not the editor or it's not the reporter that's deciding the news, it's rather the advertiser. So there's no point in talking about making it gender sensitive, but why would they bother, because when they are deciding what are the editorial contents. And my arguments often is like, okay, even the advertising agency are also the part of the society, so why can't we try and even make them gender aware, make them gender responsive on what sort of advertisements they are making or what sort of contents they are interested into. So that is something, while we need to understand while looking into commercial aspect. But unfortunately, in case of Nepal in particular, I think when we talk about South Asia in general, I see more and more advertisements being gender sensitive. For instance, in India, I have seen that they have tied up with government and even agencies, and they have come up with very interesting gender sensitive message. But then again, they are often limited to Women's Day or certain occasion. Again, that is there, but at least something is happening, and we don't see that happening much. I wouldn't say there's nothing in Nepal, but then I don't see it much. And even we as media educators, I think even we are hesitant, or we haven't been able to collaborate with advertisers. That is one thing. And the other aspect I see when we talk about the sustainability is the journalism, our role like journalism educators and educational institution, that I'm sure Dr. Aryal will talk about in details in later. The gender mainstreaming in journalism education is also seriously lacking. So when we train these future journalists, we are not making them enough gender sensitive or gender aware. Like I said before, we are not being able to make them understand that you have to have the gender lens when you look into different kind of news stories or when you select news sources. And again, and talking about the other stakeholders would be NGOs and professional organizations. Personally, I think NGOs and different organizations like Media Action Nepal, they are doing incredible job when it comes to ensuring gender dimension to news media. So maybe these organizations are sort of more visible, and we or audience or outsiders, they tend to expect too much, because I don't think one particular organization can take the whole burden of this issue. And the other stakeholder that we somehow try to question is the government, that Dr. Aryal and Mr. Pant have already discussed about, but we are not doing enough when it comes to making the government accountable. The issues of safety are there, like previous speakers talked about. There are a number of policies too, but then again, like the safety of journalists is an issue, but then the safety of women journalists is like a different thing. There are gender specific challenges, and these policies, they are more of a blanket policies, and they don't talk about the gender specific challenges, or they are not gender sensitive enough, I would say, all the programs and policies. And that is other thing we should look into. And even the government media, I sort of feel this should have been actually one of the examples of how the media organizations should be, but we are sort of failing there as well, so nothing much is happening. So coming back to sustainability, what I want to say is, like, of course the fact is we have more corporate media organizations who are more inclined towards profit, like the financial aspect of it. But what is also important to know is, like, when we look into the audience of the past and present, there have been significant changes. That is, the audience, they are being more aware. The media literacy is slowly, but then it's still increasing. So the audience have sort of started rejecting the insensitive messages. They have started questioning the credibility. And I think if we work a little bit more on this area, then that is one of the best strategy, I would say. When the media organizations will not have the audience, they are trying their best to sensitize the gender-based violence stories, lot of objectification. But then when we reach up to that level and when we start rejecting, then maybe that would be one of the important steps, and audience will be more in favor of the news media organizations that are more responsible, that are more gender sensitive. And same goes when we talk about the participation as well. There are actually evidence which shows that women sort of bring a new viewpoint to the news stories. There are interesting findings that shows that women journalists are capable of looking into the issues which have already been ignored by male colleagues. So that actually the women's participation is not just the social responsibility part, but then it actually becomes an asset. But we need to make all these organizations and the stakeholders, we have to make them more accountable when it comes to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Samiksha. With this, we have some time restraint as well. So with this, I'll immediately pose the next question to Mr. Pant, asking what could be done to ensure the safety of journalists in Nepal, but from what can the state actors, organization like Media Action Nepal, journalists themselves and media houses can do to protect journalists in Nepal and also in South Asia?
Safety is a very serious phenomenon, and some would go on saying that democratic states protect the interest of journalists, and they would never start questioning whether laws and policies and actions are being taken in line with their commitments. So detaching for journalists. If they could detach themselves from their too much political inclination, that would possibly create a space for journalists to criticize the wrongdoings of powers. So when media start criticizing the wrongdoings, and they could best protect the interest of their citizens, of having their voices being heard. That is one area for journalists. Second is, so far as safety, the professional safety issues are concerned, we have very good laws as well. The constitutional provisions, some laws, protecting the interest of journalists, including that of the fundamental rights provisions under Article 19 of our Constitution, right to communication. The newsrooms, the media houses that of large-scale investment, they must commit towards, through their actions at the time of crisis, come up with some packages for their journalists without harassing them. There are a lot of financial harassment in the biggest media houses of Nepal. And these issues have never been discussed, because when it comes to the harassment, financial harassment from the media owners, these issues do not find space in the news media they are working for, because this comes the violation of their safety issues, professional safety issues in and outside the newsrooms. Also, when it comes to the safety of women journalists in particular, there are many cases that journalists have spoken after leaving the media rooms. We are now talking about some issues coming in front about, a case that is filed at the court. I would not like to talk about that as such, but there have never been, discussions about how journalists have, especially the women journalists, have been harassed in the newsrooms. I had an opportunity to talk to journalists 2.5 years ago when I was doing a study for an international journal. I talked to many women journalists. Their stories are same. And media houses, the newsrooms have mandatory responsibility to report, protect, file case against the perpetrators in and outside that newsrooms, but this is not happening here in Nepal. And when it comes to the interest of individuals fighting for their rights, other than journalists, also these news stories are not that much highlighted. So a serious commitment towards the implementation of national laws, the protection of journalists in terms of their professional safety first. Newsrooms and big media houses need to commit, and they should abide by the existing domestic laws. Third one, the commitments of the authorities. They do when they are, even if recently there is the 11th amendment to the National Broadcasting Regulation of Nepal. Principally, it is too paradoxical. It is a broadcast law, but it is talking about webcasting. So without taking care in mind the implications of National Broadcasting Act. So there are many issues that are very closely linked to the presenting the pretext that it could stop disinformation, and it could stop attacks against privacy, especially by YouTube channels and social media. But it has serious implications to the lives of journalists, because the newsrooms as well, when they start approaching to the media, to their sources, there will be very limited voice. So authorities, especially the parliamentarians, the legislatives and government authorities, also sometimes judiciary, while defining laws, interpreting these laws and cases, need to be very mindful of their commitments. They don't need to go far to their international commitments, but their own fundamental rights provisions that protect the very interest of journalists and media people. That is another thing. But that addressing the impunity, that's serious. I have been closely watching the cases of impunity here in Nepal. Very few cases of 35 journalists being killed, the record by Federation of Nepali Journalists, but that is not actually accepted by the international communities. If you go on seeing the CPJ's record, it has mentioned about only 12 or 13 journalists have been killed. So maybe we need to define actually who is a journalist, and whether non-journalistic activities of journalists should count into the issue of safety of journalists or not. This is high time. But at the same time, very less has been done by authorities because of the yesterday's perpetrators are now part of the government, and all perpetrators, those both warring parties, and they have issues. They are still compromising on the issues that for journalists who are inclined to them, their political ideology, they are saying leave it. We have some instrument here in Nepal, for example, post-conflict justice mechanisms, TRC, CIDP, disappearance commissions, and all. But I would say, since Nepal is a state party to several tools, the cases, violations, and crimes against journalists should not be taken, should not be considered with respect to transitional instrument. Rather, they should come into the cases of criminal offense and criminal justice system. Only then, authorities could possibly take action against the perpetrators who kill journalists or who created threats against journalists, who stop them exposing truth. But this is not again happening here in Nepal. In the international forums back in 2017, I was also one of the panelists in Sri Lanka, a program organized by the government of Sri Lanka and UNESCO. We talked about establishing a regional mechanism in South Asia as well, in the presence of National Human Rights Commissions across South Asia, where they are available, but it is also not happening. Maybe this is a moment that we could possibly talk about these issues with some documentations. This roundtable discussion could possibly come up with some way forwards to remind authorities to establish that kind of mechanism, actually materialize it. Here in Nepal also, we have been talking about this, the National Human Rights Commission, but it is actually not happening. The reasons are many. Maybe I have responded to your questions.
Yes, Mr. Pant, that's thank you for answering my question. And moving forward, I'd like to ask Ms. Samiksha Koirala about how can we ensure media sustainability while focusing on gender sensitivity and inclusivity?
All right. Yes, I have somehow answered that question a little bit earlier as well. So I think let's just focus on the way forward, like just building on to what Mr. Panta was talking about. So of course the problems are there when we talk about media sustainability, or when we talk about the issue of inclusivity and or gender sensitivity. And even in events, even in our work, we somehow tend to focus much on the problems, and we kind of shy away when it comes to what should be done. And if the problem is there, there should be solution. So what is the way forward? Mr. Pant has actually very specifically pointed out the way forward. How can we actually move forward in the context of Nepal and as a whole, in a South Asian region? Personally, for me also, I agree with what he already shared. And one thing I want to talk about that I'm actually seeing in some of the regions, in some of the countries, that we could actually replicate is especially when talking about women journalist safety. There has been a rise on women's peer support group, kind of a loose network where they make a group in a messenger, and they are the women journalists who have survived certain kind of sexual harassment or violence, but then they are not ready to talk about it. So there's so much of psychological stress they have to go through during that phase. So these networks, they are peer support group, and they are providing this support to each other, psychosocial and referring to psychosocial counseling whenever needed. So that is something we are actually missing in Nepal's context. But then you might ask, why do we need that if we can actually make a system where first, there's no harassment, and secondly, even if there's harassment, if we can make a very smooth system where there is a reporting mechanism, if the media organizations facilitate this issue, then of course we wouldn't be talking about it. But then this problem is very much serious, then we are aware. And actually we listen about these cases here and there, but I strongly feel that it is just tip of the iceberg, and there are numerous number of unreported cases, mainly because of our victim blaming culture. There was one particular incident of harassment of women journalists like a few months ago, and when she wanted to talk about it, not just for her, even for all the survivors, I see like, why did you report it so late? Why didn't you report it on that time? And would you like to name that? Why don't you name the perpetrator in public? If you name him, then only we'll be able to take the action. So we somehow try, while attempting to help, attempting to support, we somehow make the survivor's life very difficult, that women journalists are not trying to confront these cases of sexual assault, and unfortunately it's happening within the media newsrooms. That is something we have to be very much aware of. And on the area of policies, I strongly think we need gender policies in media organizations. There are few, but then we have to ensure a mechanism that these policies are implemented as well. I was reviewing some of the policies that we already have, and our focus has been so much on content, but then we haven't talked about how to ensure the safety of our own employees or journalists in the case of media organizations. So we have to make those things clear on policies as well. And the other aspect I think that we are lacking even in this region is the collaboration aspect of it that I already talked about. We really need to collaborate with our stakeholders and build on each other's expertise, because I think the journalism education in Nepal and the media organizations in Nepal, although we overlap so much and what we do, there's not a solid bridge has not been formed yet, and this is something I am very much concerned about. And the other aspect that we lack is a regular training as well, because these things, the challenges related to media, challenges related to gender equality, it is changing with time. Just because we learn something might not be enough, so there should be this regular there should be certain trainings and a regular interval. And other aspect is like we haven't still done enough when it comes to digital space. Of course, it is not just the responsibility of media organizations. Again, there are multiple stakeholders, including the tech giants. So whatever we can do from our side, let's just try to make a digital space a safe place, because I think that will kind of give an opportunity, not just for women, but also for marginal community who are not getting access or who are not being heard in the news media. So that is also another element we need to think about. That's all from me.
Thank you, Samiksha, Koirala, and I'd like to thank both our panelists, Mr. Pant and Samiksha Koirala, for highlighting very important steps, very important way forward steps, what different stakeholders like state actors, organizations like us, we as people involved in working for media freedom and freedom of expression, and also media themselves and journalists can do, and why is it important to have inclusive media and also have gender sensitivity for media sustainability. So with this, and as I began the session with the question to Mr. Aryal, and we were talking about the history of media in Nepal and how media has progressed so far. So it is very important, I guess, to talk about media education. He's a media educator, and then my last question that I'd like to pose to him would be about connecting these issues that we discussed today. It's very important that we connect it with media education. So how do you connect these issues we discussed today with media education in Nepal, Mr. Aryal?
Thank you. I will be very brief, as I am seeing our program host is also back over there at the podium. Actually, we should admit that our curricula, our course of studies are not adequate to address this new scenario of online media, especially the social media. There should be very complementary and supplementary role between the mainstream media and the social media. Mainstream media, I mean mainstream media includes online web-based journalism as well. But I'm talking about journalism, the edited content, and the social media individual expression. There should be a role of supplementary and complementary. But much new media discourse on politics and journalism has been driven by the democratic ideals, only ideals, and ICT potential, rather than the communicative practices and what is going on in field and politicians and the journalists operating in existing democracies. That is why that is the somehow problematic area. There we need to spread media literacy. We need to tell people that you should complain, or you should come up with the to address the abuse of or misuse of social media sometimes, because we have seen that even he was president of USA, Mr. Trump, but he was muted on social media because of two grounds, the clear and present danger. So that is there. That is why we need to take care of that. And from the media education, from the sphere of media education, we need to have collaboration between media academia and the media industry. And by doing so, we can tell government, or we can convey the message to the government that government need not to be so paternalistic, that everything only they give their logic that everything is ruining, everything is not in order. To make order, we should grab the media, we should control the social media. That is not the actual, that is not a proper solution. So that, but that all these messages we can spread across the country, across the general audience, with the collaboration between media and education. And after all, we need actually fold of this gratification, usage and gratification approach, that is cognition, that is diversion, social utility, withdrawal. At last, we need to be dependable, we need to be trustworthy, we need to be reliable for the general public. That is the solution. I think that then only we can be sustainable, media can be sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aryal. Thank you for your insights. And with this, we are at the end of our roundtable discussion on media sustainability and safety concerns for journalists in Nepal and beyond. I'm very thankful for all three panelists, Mr. Aryal, Mr. Pant, and Ms. Koirala. Thank you for, we started with a brief history of media in Nepal, and then we talked about safety of journalists, we talked about gender sensitivity in media in South Asia, we also talked about safety of journalists in Nepal and in South Asia. What are the challenges due to new media? How can media be sustainable with the advent of digitization and new media, and also way forward, how can we move forward? Thank you for such interesting session. I'm very thankful for, also I'm very thankful to Dhaka Media Summit, the Future of Journalism, for providing us the opportunity to discuss on such important topic from the perspective of Nepal as well as from the perspective of South Asia. So our next session is on digital media in Indonesia, audience access and commodification, which is a research panel, and it would begin at 3 p.m. Bangladesh time. So I would like to hand over to Mr. Barbak, over to you, Mr. Barbak.
Thank you so much, Ms. Priyanka Jha, the session moderator of this session, Media Sustainability and Safety Concerns for Journalists in Nepal and Beyond. And of course, our thanks and sincere gratitude to the discussions, Dr. Laxman Datt, Dr. Kundan Aryal and Dr. Samiksha Koirala. The session was so engaging. I listened to it and I enjoyed the discussion, the flow. I must say that it was very nicely woven. And if we look into the topic, media sustainability and safety concerns, two very important terms, I may say that of global concerns or issues of global concern. In today's world, as you discussed, that the inclusion or invention of digital technologies have taken media to a new height, where the mainstream media that we used to tell previously, the traditional media, for example, the print newspapers and other print forms, television, they are struggling in a way or the other. And also safety of the journalists, that is also of global concern nowadays. So you have very nicely woven these two issues together in your discussion. And also you have talked about a very important issue, that how academia can intervene into this, how academia can help industry. I think that is a very important issue to discuss today, because the way we here at ULAB believe, and that's what actually initiated this particular conference, Dhaka Media Summit, that the media schools, journalism schools, communication schools, whatever you name it, should have strong collaborations with the industry, should help each other. Because if the communication and media schools are not doing well, if they cannot produce graduates with proper skills for the industry, then industry will not go well. And on the other hand, if the media cannot sustain, then for whom we will produce graduates. So I think the relationship between us is quite reciprocal. We are intertwined. We cannot separate each other. So we should talk. And that's what brought the inception of Dhaka Media Summit 2022. So at this part, we will go for a short break. Now we'll resume our proceedings again at 3 p.m. Bangladesh Standard Time, as already mentioned by Ms. Jha. When we come back, we will start our proceedings with a research panel from LSPR Communication and Business Institute, Jakarta, Indonesia. Looking forward to seeing you again in that session. Till then, goodbye. Thank you.